That's your Wright State Fest, right, University, right? So they have your session, right?
Yeah, there's.
It's coming, it's coming.
All right, so hello everyone. Oh, that's the end. Okay, we're gonna close your eyes. Okay. So my name is Kristen Johnson. I am a fourth-year medical student. I'm an MD and Master's of Public Health student at Wright State University Boonshaw School of Medicine in Dayton, Ohio. I am a Columbus, Ohio native. But I come to you today with my hat on as National President of the Student National Medical Association. So I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about the medical students' perspective, as well as some things that we as medical students are doing right now to try to stay current and to try to make a difference in this area. So first, I want to just give you a little idea. So the Student National Medical Association has been around since 1964, but our mission is threefold. So one, we want to make sure that we're increasing diversity in medicine. That means that we are supporting students from underrepresented backgrounds who are both current medical students and future medical students. Secondly, we have a very strong commitment to serving the underserved. So for us, we have a lot of our graduates who go into policy and working specifically in inner city communities that may not necessarily have other physicians who are there. And then third, I put starving to change the culture of medicine. And why do I put starving? Because that is something that is happening right now. The culture of medicine is starving, and we'll go into that. And so as the culture of medicine is starving, we are working ourselves to try to fill that need that's left in the culture of medicine. You'll see pictures here. Our membership is incredibly diverse. We've got students from all different backgrounds, at many medical schools across the country. We have over 160 chapters. So this year, my executive agenda as national president really focused on making sure that medical students understand that as medical students, we can't just sit in a room. How many doctors do we have in here? So everybody remembers first and second year of med school, right? Where you kind of sat in the library or in a corner and you studied and cried yourself to sleep and ate ramen noodles and studied again. And that hasn't really changed much. We may not use books per se, we use computers, but that's about the only difference. Everybody comes in with one prescription on their glasses and contacts, we leave with another. But in that, I wanted to make sure students understand that it's important, right? We have to practice. So if you're not going to understand social justice or advocacy or health disparities now as a medical student, you're not going to understand that when nobody's specifically paying you to do that. And so I wanted to make sure other students understood how important that was. For us, when we talk about mental or behavioral health, we have a January monthly service protocol. So every month we have a different community service protocol where we charge our students to go out and do something about that. January for us is kind of nice. It's right after break. People are coming back, kind of trying to regroup. But at the same time, you get a lot of the seasonal affective depressive disorder that comes out. A lot of students kind of need something to kind of allow them to talk about this, but also you see this in patients, and you see the patients who are coming into the offices when you're a third and fourth year kind of change. Our 2015-2016 programmatic focus was also around mental health, and we really, set out this idea that, this stigma in medicine, especially in underserved communities surrounding health and mental health services, needs to stop. And so with that, we actually sent out a checkup from the Neck Up plan so that all of our students could kind of get out there, talk to people in the community about why your mental health is just as important as your physical health. They're one and the same, and if one isn't working, the other one won't either. We also have national policy statements that we do publish on, and we talk about when things happen about mental health, specifically substance abuse and things of that nature. In this picture, you'll see our immediate past president and then our current chair, who was then our pre-medical board member. And that was one of our National Leadership Institutes while we were talking about mental health and having that focus. So I want to specifically talk a little bit about medical education, and that's, kind of what we are focusing on. And so you'll see that I have the one side with the book and the other side with the iPad, because that's kind of what happens. We're kind of making this transition. And you see that, as we're making this transition, unfortunately, I think we're not spending enough time talking about things that are necessary for our medical students to understand. I came into medical school, I knew I wanted to be a family doctor. There was nobody who was going to change me of that. And as I went through my classes, we learned about a whole bunch of different disorders that happen, mental health problems, how do you fix them, et cetera. It's great, right? So you take step one, you've learned it, yay, we can pass through it. And then you get to the other side and you find out about what's actually happening in the clinics. For my psych rotation, it was 6 weeks, which is much longer than others, but I had 2 days of child psych, and those 2 days were like play therapy days where these kids were kind of brought into what looked like a daycare center, and honestly, I was terrified because I was set in a room and there were toys being thrown and people were screaming at each other, and I had no idea what was going on, and nobody had prepared me for this, and I didn't know what was happening. And once we finally got everybody kind of calmed down, then I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I left the next day and went back to the psych ward where I had, my schizophrenic patient who was 55, who was telling me that people were telling him to kill me, and I was even more afraid. And I think as medical educators, we don't do a good job of protecting our medical students in going through this process, or preparing them in going through this process. That the kid that was throwing the toy across the room maybe wasn't trying to hit me with it. I just happened to be in the line of fire. But when you come from a place where you haven't been taught this or explained this, it makes it much more difficult for students to understand. From a family medicine and public health background, and ideas for me as I'm going on, kind of still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, not having started residency yet, I think, we don't necessarily talk about that continuity of care. When it comes to psychiatric disorders, we talk about specifically what happens in child psych and then what happens in adult psych. There's no continuity that we're taught. And for me personally, as a family doctor, what was said before about the idea of being able to take care of mom and kid at the same time is wonderful. But we don't talk about the patient who, like we heard earlier, we have the young men with sickle cell, and we know that they've had problems all their lives with pain, but when they move away from home, are we going to talk about the stigma that goes along with people who look a certain way who need narcotic medications? Are we going to talk about the biases that are imposed upon our medical students every day? Because we know that they need the medication, but the real idea behind that is when you look a certain way and you walk into the ED, you're automatically pain-seeking, that's it. And so now that we know that these two young men have everything going for them and we've gotten them where they have coping skills, we still need to be cognizant of the fact that as physicians and as educators, we're not doing the system justice by creating situations where medical students are caused to almost harden by the biases and the ideas of yesterday. So I think that's something that we really need to consider as we go forward, as we're training the medical professionals of tomorrow, whether they be physicians, whether they be nurses, whether they be peer supporters. I think it's important to make sure that everyone understands that these biases and these stigmas that are here and they are very present, they're affecting communities of especially our underserved communities, but they're affecting communities across the board. And in the ways that we look at our training, we definitely have to put extra time into ensuring that students and faculty can work together in dispelling these myths and really preparing everyone for what's to come. Thank you.